It's 4 o'clock on a Monday, and you know what that means. Yes, sirree, Bob. It's time for another exciting episode of Taxi TV Live. Woo-hoo! That was pathetic. This week, brought to you by Southern California Rain. Yay. We finally got some. Hello, everybody. Let's see, there's the chat room. Hello, Martians on Maui. Amanda, AJ Hal, 96. Howie Wolf. Same people over and over. Let's scroll down, see who else we've got in there. CM Songs, Craig Robart, Dan Lowe, Danny Weber, Dean Turner, Eric Spurl, Gloria. Hey, Gloria Covington, how are you? John Calvin, Ken DePotter, Dean Turner, Mark Doyle, West LA Steve. Hello. So, what I want to tell you is we got a lot of rain over the weekend, just buckets of rain, which is unusual for Southern California. And along with the rain, we got some water in my particular office. I came into work this morning. I actually got a text before I got here. I was running late, and a couple people from my staff said, we're dealing with the rain you had in your office, or the water you had in your office. So let me take the camera off of my laptop and see. You know when the big fans are brought in by the building maintenance crew, and the ladders are there, meaning roof tiles came down, and waste baskets aplenty, meaning that's what was catching the rainwater. My little office got flooded. So I am a little less than well prepared for today's show. Or I shouldn't say that. I don't want you to feel like you're getting half a show, because you're not. You're actually getting the whole damn thing. But there were a couple other little things I wanted to include in the show today that I haven't gotten to yet, but I'll probably think of them as we're doing it. So let's see. Wow. Okay. Yeah, Amanda says she's in Ireland. She says, "Welcome to my world." And finally, the drought is officially over in Southern California, so we're all happy about that. But it really has little to do with the rain that actually fell here, and more to do with the rain that fell up north in Colorado and the Sierra Nevada, all that snow that's up there that will melt off and turn our lawns green again now that they've been damaged beyond all repair. I think a lot of people will be buying sod this summer. So nobody actually got nobody guessed what the show is going to be about. Somebody came kind of close, but not really that close. I'm excited to do the show. It's something that I've maybe touched on a little bit now and again over the years, but I've never really done a whole show about. And frankly, I don't know if I've got 30 minutes worth of material here or an hour and 30 minutes, so bear with me. Anyway, it's music success strategy, and something that you've probably never used before, and I'm going to tell you what it is right now. Ooh, I need a drum roll for this. Let's see. Do I have a drum roll? Somewhere I've got a drum roll. Where the heck did the drum roll go? All right. The strategy is the intersection of genres that you can do and what gets used the most. So many people just sit down and create whatever comes to them. Not a lot of people create music by intent, and I know some people are going to say, oh, that's not artistry, sitting down and creating something because you're on a mission or you're aiming at a target. You know me. I want everybody to make money making music because that's what they love to do, and I think they should be paid for that. If you want to just make music because you love to do it and it's in your heart and your soul and you're doing it for purely recreational purposes, that's fine. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying if you want to make money with your music, why not go with the genres that you do well, that intersect with the genres that get used the most? We've all seen emails, classes, and online courses that teach musicians how to become successful in the industry. But in my years of experience, I've never seen anybody make the case for looking at musical genres as a big key to success. There are hundreds of genres, I'm reading my notes now in case you couldn't tell. hundreds of genres and subgenres of music. Some of them are used in records and film and TV, and quite often, many of them aren't. But how many musicians ever take stock of what it is, genre-wise, that they do well, and the genres that are needed most often? I think that's the most largely overlooked strategy. People talk about, social media and all the, marketing stuff and how to book gigs and how to tour effectively. But what about just making music that, is it something you already do well, genres that you already do well, intersecting with genres that are needed? So, let's see. You can make a strong case for being one of the few people. Oh, let's think about this for a minute. Let's say you're a real niche-y person, and your niche is Aboriginal didgeridoo music. Now, clearly, not a huge market for that. But if you already do it and do that well, why not do a ton of it and get it out there in a bunch of different production music libraries, a bunch of different publishers, so that you are the person that kind of hits the top of the pile every time. You're a specialist. So what you may lack in quantity, you've made up for in quality, and by being niche-oriented, or niche-oriented as some people like to call it, you could do really well with that. I can't say that you're going to make $100,000 a year just doing didgeridoo music, but how many of your friends and fellow musicians are doing that and doing it well? So the flip side of that coin is doing something like EDM, electronic dance music, that at the moment, for the last couple of years, few years maybe, and maybe a couple or few years into the future, it's the happening thing. A lot of pop records are kind of based on EDM, music that gets licensed for a lot of TV shows, party scenes, commercials, EDM, 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 to the point where we're all sick of hearing those three letters. So there's a big market for it. Then again, there's a lot of competition in that market, so you may not stand out. Then again, maybe if you can put a twist on what your EDM does that other people aren't doing, maybe you would be the standout. So I've assembled a very long list. I want to say hundreds of genres and subgenres. It's really, really long, and that's what we're going to do on today's show, is go through this long list to help stimulate your brain, to get you thinking about finding the nexus of styles of music that you make and what the industry uses most frequently. I was going to say needs, but no, it's not what it needs, it's what it uses most frequently. I've assembled this list from 2 or 3 sources, and I can't say that I am honestly expert enough to give you examples of artists or songs in every one of these genres. I was actually going to try, and then just said, oh, forget it, that'll never work. I was going to try and give examples of every genre, but you can't, because the examples are wide-ranging in many of the genres, and I realized that if I put music on the show, that YouTube and the publishers are just going to mute the show anyway, so I decided to scratch that idea. But I will interject some thoughts as we move through the list as to how, when, and where some of these genres could be used. And I want you guys in the chat room to chime in as well. I'm telling you, there is a gold mine in here. And maybe what I should do at some point is put this list out there and send it out to you guys in an email or something, or put it up on the website. I think it's a gold mine. Let's see if you guys agree with me. So let's just get started. Gosh, it's 16 pages long and about a 14-point font. Acapella. How many of you are doing a cappella? Easy enough to do, right? Don't have to worry about setting up any drum tracks. And a cappella could be anything from, oh gosh, what do they call it? Of course, I'm going to be brain dead on this. 4 guys hanging out in the street corner doing that. That could be a cappella. Barbershop quartet could be a cappella. Moving on to the next one. AAA. Now, there's a genre that was so popular in like the early 90s through probably 2000. AAA, adult album alternative. Who the hell even knows what AAA is anymore? But it's a genre that was on a publisher's list of genres. So Hootie and the Blowfish, good example of that one. I Always Want to Be With You. Was that the name of the song? That was a big AAA hit. Aboriginal, and then underneath is Aboriginal slash Australian. I don't know that Australian music actually has a sound, but certainly Aboriginal music does. And that would go back to the aforementioned didgeridoo. Just not that many people doing that music. But you know what? Plenty of shows, travel shows, other shows take place in Australia. They've got to get that music from somewhere. Um, let's see, acid jazz. I don't know how much acid jazz is getting used today. I think, and I'm not expert on this, I will openly admit or quickly admit that I'm not an expert on acid jazz, but isn't it pretty similar to trip hop? Just saying. Acoustic underscores. Now, that could be anything. Technically, you could make the argument that an acoustic underscore could be violins, right? Or it could be something that's really simple. Acoustic guitar, slide guitar. It could be an unusual tuning of a guitar. So there you go, acoustic underscores. Action music, we all know what that sounds like. I love this next one, adult music. And I'm not sure if they mean, because adult contemporary follows it on the list, so I'm not sure if they mean like wah, 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 adult like triple X music, or if they mean adult contemporary, but those are both genres. African music, that could be African tribal music, could be music that you would hear in Johannesburg in a club. Who knows? I'm guessing they mean beat-oriented tribal stuff. The next category, next genre is African tribal thriller music. I have no idea what that is, but I'm guessing it's probably been used in a James Bond movie at some point. Afro is a genre. Can't be that different from African, but I'd be curious to know the differences. Afro-Cuban, we all know what that sounds like. It's pretty friggin' awesome, if I do say so myself. Afro-pop, Afro-beat, alternative folk, alternative pop, alternative rock, and obviously you could say alt-folk, alt-pop, and alt-rock. Ambient music, and that can be a wide range of ambient stuff. And frankly, I think that this is one, I promised myself that I would point some of these out today on the show, so I'm marking that one. Ambient music could be ambient drones, could be, electronic ambient drones. It could be ambient acoustic music. It could be, maybe some sort of acoustic drone where you're just taking a slide on an acoustic guitar and go, wow. That stuff is so wildly popular right now on, it's a genre of TV that I keep referring to that you see all the time on the Fusion Network. You see it on Viceland. You see it on the videos that Vice puts on YouTube. And I'm noticing that the major networks are starting to pick up on it, and composers that are scoring big TV shows on broadcast networks are starting to use that style of music, which is, it runs a gamut of emotions. It could be anticipatory, it could be dangerous sounding, it could be stress-inducing, tension-inducing. There are a lot of things that ambient music can be. Just plain old ambient drones of any sort are becoming very, very popular right now. So keep your eye on that ball. Ambient house music, ambient rock. Frankly, I don't know what that sounds like. I'm putting a check by that to go check it out. Americana. There is a genre that has pretty much withstood the test of time. We still get listings for Americana. Arabic. I think I brought this up on a show recently. With things being as crazy as they are in the world with terrorism, and so many shows that touch on the subject of terrorism and send CIA officers off to the Middle East to chase down the bad guys, I would think that Arabic music running from just a simple piece of flute music or drums up to what you might hear at a birthday celebration or a wedding, anything Middle Eastern, there's going to be a market for that. Arena rock. I bet you they don't have this on the list, but I'm going to check, see if they've got it down as stripper rock, which is not that far away from arena rock. I think we all know what that is, just big, big 3 or 4 piece band rock with lots of guitar amps. Um, Asian music, that's a very broad genre, and I think that some of the subgenres that would fall under Asian are on the list today. Atmospheric, that could go back to ambient. You'll see ambient and atmospheric used together in a lot of our listing descriptions. I think people in the industry on the publisher side and music supervisors and editors that may talk about music use those two words kind of together or interchanged. Avant-garde, and then followed by avant-garde jazz. Frankly, I don't know that I could identify or describe just plain old avant-garde, but I could point my finger at avant-garde jazz because I took several jazz classes in college. Here's one I've never heard of before. It's either bachata or, I'm going with bachata, Bachata. I have no idea what that is. I'm putting a check mark by it to look it up. Ballads. Now, that was actually on one of these lists as a genre. I don't know that I would call ballads a genre. I would have to say that ballads are a style. You could have a country ballad, you could have an adult contemporary ballad, you could have a pop ballad. Trying to think of other kinds of ballads. So I would say that ballads are a style and not necessarily a genre. Ballroom. Ballroom music would be what you hear when people are doing ballroom dancing, I'm guessing. Maybe it's a three-quarter waltz would be something, one of those Civil War movies with a bunch of really handsome men in their Civil War uniforms dancing with a bunch of ladies with really big skirts. That might fall under ballroom, but it's one of those genres that's broad. And probably runs through several time periods. So I want you to think about that as we're going through this list. Think about time periods and eras. Some of these things transcend and cover several eras. I've actually got a couple of visual aids to show you later that I think you will enjoy. Banda. I've got to say, we've probably had 3 requests for banda music, which is a form of Latin music, in the last 6 months, I want to say. 6, 7, 8 months, something like that. I don't know why some genres like that. I've frankly never even heard the word until the first library that called us up and requested it. And all of a sudden, not everybody, several people were looking for it. Why? Probably a TV show that was going somewhere where banda music emanates from, and they needed it. They wanted the authenticity factor. Barbershop Quartet. Not going to get a lot of requests for that one, but we all know what it sounds like. Bar lounge music. Bar lounge music. Now, it depends. I did a show probably a year or two ago where I talked about bars, cars, and restaurants. Places that you frequently hear music that end up being the backgrounds for scenes in TV shows and films a lot. You could have bar music, a dusty roadhouse with motorcycles out front and a bunch of burly guys with tattoos and Hell's Angels vests. That would be one kind of bar music. Something on the Upper East Side of New York City would be another kind of bar music, and that might be called lounge music because it's a little more sophisticated. So that, I think there's an implication that lounge music is more sophisticated, probably swings more toward jazz or trip hop, maybe house, things like that have more of a beat, but they're sophisticated. Let's see, Baroque music from the 1600s and 1700s. I made a note here, 1600 to 1750. So that's going to be something that, in my estimation, is going to be fairly complex to compose. And there aren't going to be that many requests for it. But then again, if there is a particular film or TV show that is done in that era, and you're the person that has kind of cornered the market on Baroque music, yay you might end up with a big bunch of placements in a big hurry and then see a valley again that's going to be a very long, low valley for quite some time. Here's one I've never heard of, but I can pretty much hear it in my head, and that is Baroque pop. I can actually, gosh, I want to say Strawberry Alarm Clock, the band Strawberry Alarm Clock from the 60s, but it's not exactly who I'm thinking of. They were on a movie soundtrack with another band that I think would classify as Baroque pop. I'm sure that nobody in a white powdered wig was doing pop music back during the Baroque period. Um, but pop music that is influenced by Baroque, I can absolutely hear. All right, here we go. Here comes one of my visual aids. And I actually saw this picture. We ran a listing around August, I believe, looking for a particular kind of unusual flute and drum music from Spain, okay? From Spain. And that would fall under the category of Basque music, and there's your visual aid for this one. So these are modern people that are taking place in a celebration somewhere in a particular town in Spain that does this annual thing, and the music they're playing is Basque music. Now, that doesn't necessarily imply, Basque music doesn't necessarily mean that it comes from a period that is contemporary or from the old days. I see you guys are talking about refreshing again, connection issues. Just so you guys know, I actually did some work on that between last week's show and this week's show, and I thought for sure I had solved the problem. I got myself a dongle. Everybody needs a dongle. Got myself a dongle from Apple that is a lightning or thunderbolt connector to a what do you call it? The blue wire that goes into the wall. I can't think. My head's in another space right now. Anyway, rather than using the Wi-Fi connection, I'm back to going hardwired again. And even that seems to be not solving the problem for everybody. So I'm sorry, guys. I don't know what else I could do. We've got a nice strong signal on this end, and I've got it going right into a wire. So don't know. Okay, getting back to my list. Just left off with Basque, and boy, do I have to pick up the pace. Bass house music, Bavarian music. People in Lederhosen, oompa, oompa, oompa. What would you hear in a German beer garden during Oktoberfest? That would be Bavarian music. Or maybe the dude with that giant horn that I don't know the name of in the Ricola commercial. Bebop. Jazz, a form of jazz. We all love bebop. Big band, 1940s, big band stuff. I'm trying to think of, was Stan Kenton big band? I think so. Name some other big band guys. Score Crazy says, I need to invest in a satellite. Yeah. They're cheap. They're only about $200 billion. I'll run right out and buy one. As soon as I get that private jet I've always wanted, I will buy the satellite, I promise you. Big band music. Everybody loves big band, and we do get quite a few requests for big band. I'm sorry, I'm scanning the chat really quick here. A TV station would solve the problem. Yeah, that's what I need, is a TV station. Yo, Dino is in the house. Good to see you, buddy. Okay, Big Beat. Biography music. I was surprised to find that one on the list, but think about, do you remember, I think it might have been on PBS for many, many years, and it's probably still out there in one of the cable nets, the TV show Biography. They did have kind of a musical palette that they always used, and it was before the explosion of contemporary music libraries that we know today. So maybe that's a genre of its own. Blue-Eyed Soul. Oh man, who were those guys from the mid to late 70s? Two guys, one with long blonde hair, one with black hair and a mustache. Why can't I think of their names? I can barely remember my 4 daughters' names. Glenn Miller, there you go. Great example of big band. Blue-Eyed Soul. They did the song Sarah Smile. Hall & Oates, thank you. Great example of Blue-Eyed Soul. Bluegrass, we all know what that sounds like. Blues, we all know what that sounds like. Blues rock, I think we all know what that sounds like. It's been a wildly successful and frequently requested genre for the last 5, 6, 7 years now. Doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon. Bolero, here's one. I didn't know that these two ever got combined. Bolero norteño. It's a form of Latin music. Bolivian. I'm guessing Bolivian music sounds a lot like Peruvian music. Four people playing those little pan flutes, wearing the colorful garb and the cute little hats. Bollywood. Indian music, and I think that Bollywood is probably a subgenre of, Indian being the broader parent genre, if you will. Bollywood is usually associated with those really cheesy, wonderfully cheesy, I might add, Bollywood musicals that often are just gigantic production numbers with like 100 people dancing and singing. Awesome clothing, very colorful. Boogie Woogie, we all know what that sounds like. Bossa Nova. If you do Bossa Nova well, you should look at developing a Bossa Nova collection. And Bossa Nova was really big in the mid 50s through probably 1969, and that stuff gets requested pretty frequently. So if it's something you already do, maybe you just need to do more of it. Brazilian and Brazilian jazz, breakbeat, honestly, I personally don't know. I can't hear breakbeat in my head, but I know it's been a popular genre. British music. Gosh, what does that mean? Here comes the Queen kind of British music? Does it mean the British invasion of the early 60s, aka the Beatles? The Hollies? What defines British music? I don't know. But clearly that made it onto somebody's genre list because people do TV shows that take place in Great Britain, different time periods. Maybe an old spy flick, maybe a travel piece, maybe a biography of the Queen, maybe something about the royal wedding or some other royal scandal. Who knows? Royal family scandal. Here's one that I think everybody should think about, and that is broadcast news. There is a certain sound of broadcast news, and it does change by era by era by era. Broadcast news music in the 1960s sounded completely and utterly different than what got used in the 80s, and I think it really changed the way it sounded probably in the mid to late 90s. And today, if you look carefully, you will hear really cool contemporary beats that harken to some degree to hip-hop and other stuff that is found in very contemporary pop music, EDM style stuff, all rolled into broadcast news. So I would make the case that broadcast news music has sort of a sonic palette or musical palette, if you will, but is very much influenced by whatever contemporary pop seems to be doing at the same time period. Broadway music. Not a lot of requests for that that I can think of. Probably most frequently, if there's a scene in a show where somebody is supposed to be at a Broadway musical or walking out of a Broadway musical, a man and woman on a date, and they're walking out the doors of a theater on Broadway, maybe you might hear some Broadway-esque music in the background, maybe. Of course, the show would be over, so why play it? Broadway, Las Vegas, review type music, that would be a place. On a cruise ship, you would hear Broadway show music. Las Vegas show, you would hear Broadway style music. Bumper music, bumpers, is coming back from a commercial, I believe, going into, you'd think I would know this having done so much audio post, it's ridiculous. Coming out of a commercial, coming into the show or leaving the show, going into a commercial. That is bumper music. There's also transition music that would take you from one segment to another, but not necessarily from a commercial to the show or show to the commercial. I think that's bumper, and transition is just getting from one scene. Let's say if you're watching a documentary or docuseries show, and they were taking you from one locale, they were shooting in one locale and going to another, they might use transition music to cover that edit. Country and Western, different from country, different from Western. It's country and Western. Cabaret music, Life is a Cabaret. Cajun music, and then it says Cajun Zydeco. Delta music, Louisiana music, New Orleans music, anything, not anything, certain types of swampy music that get used in, alligator hunting shows and that sort of thing. Calypso. I don't think there could be enough calypso music in the world. Caribbean. I would say the calypso is a subset of Caribbean, but frankly, I'm not smart enough to know what the differentiation is, but I think we all pretty much know what those things sound like. Carnival music. Think about it. This is a great example of one of those things where, unless somebody asked you for it, you would probably never think to make it. But what if you were the carnival music queen or king, right? What would you hear at a carnival? Calliope music, right? I don't know, what do you call that when you walk down like the main concourse of a carnival and you've got the guys on the right side, asking you to come over and swing the sledgehammer and make the thing hit the bell, or throw baseballs at bowling pins or milk bottles, or tossing rings at milk bottles. Whatever music you would hear there, which I think is pretty, I want to say calliope driven music, that would probably qualify as carnival music. Carols, Christmas carols. We all know what Christmas carols sound like, and many of them, not all of them, but many of them are public domain, which means that you could just do a cover. You don't even have to write the Christmas carol. Frankly, you're probably better off doing covers of public domain Christmas carols, because those are going to be the things that people in the industry are going to ask for. I don't think they want to hear new carols because the audience isn't familiar with them. So go with the public domain stuff. There are websites that list public domain music, and don't ever assume that something is public domain just because it's old. You might be shocked to find out some stuff that you thought was public domain actually is not. Cartoon music, that can be pretty wide-ranging, but most of it is comedic. Most of it is going to be, well, some of it in the olden days would be more score-driven, where it was probably written to picture. Imagine Elmer Fudd creeping his way around a tree looking for that pesky wabbit. Then again, it might be cartoon action-oriented, with a lot of pizzicato strings, maybe oboes or bassoons kind of stuff in there. More comedic, more fast-moving, action-oriented. Celtic, Irish Spring commercial. We all know what that sounds like. Well, actually, you got to be pretty old to know what that sounds like. Here's another one I've never heard of. Chacarera. I have no idea. I'm guessing that's a form of Latin music. Can one of you guys Google it while I'm busy doing the show and let us know what chacarera is? I think I pronounced that right. Cha-cha-cha. 60s music. We all love a good cha-cha, right? No, I'm not going to dance the cha-cha, but I actually know how, and I'm not going to tell you why. And that would be, cha-cha music would be good for retro movies. Oh gosh, what's his name? Man of Mystery, Mike Myers, the spy movie. That could be a movie that you would have cha-cha-cha. Chamber music. Not a lot of demand for it, but I bet a lot of people don't have recordings of it available. Chicago blues, Chicano rock, Children's music, that's really wide ranging, and you could be talking lullabies, you could be talking and sing along stuff like Miss Frances and Romper Room. You could be talking about music that would go in a Peanuts cartoon. Children's music can be follow along, sing along, educational, lullaby. All those things are probably subgenres. Chill step. There's a hybrid I've never heard of before. Chill wave. That's one that we get tons of requests for. Chinese music. Now the question I have when you see requests for Chinese music, do they want music that you might hear in China today? Do they want music that you might hear in a Chinese restaurant scene in a film? Do they want music that you might hear walking down a street at night in a spy or detective movie that would be emanating from buildings in the background in Chinatown? Do they want traditional ancient Chinese music done with instruments that I can't pronounce? Maybe. All those things are possibilities. Christian pop, and Christian rap, and Christian rock. Faith-based movies are actually probably doing better today than they've ever done before, and we do get requests for not just rap or rock or pop, but Christian-based pop, rap, and rock. Try and do that quickly. I think that that's a niche that is probably underserved by many, many writers. And a lot of people, it's funny, I had a conversation, if I can deviate from my list for a moment. I had a conversation 2 weeks ago with a woman who is a world-class expert on Christian music. Frankly, she probably taught me more about Christian music in the early days of taxiing. I'm talking like 1992, 93, 94. She's a font of information on the subject of Christian music and considered by many to be a world-class expert. And she told me she does some screening for Taxi every now and then. She used to screen a lot. She still does some. She lives in Nashville and does some remote screening for us. She called me up and she said, Michael, it breaks my heart to hear how many people that are submitting for Christian listings don't really seem to understand the genre. They don't sound, from the music I'm hearing from them, like they've listened to Christian artists of any generation or any era. Or any genre. And she said they really need to listen more. It's not just writing about your faith. So there aren't a lot of Christian listings where labels or artists on Christian labels are looking for new material. But we are starting to see a little influx of Christian-related or Christian-driven music for faith-based movies. So if you do Christian music, make yourself aware of what's going on out there in the marketplace and try and make yourself as contemporary as possible within the Christian genre, because I believe that that's where the sweet spot is going to be. Moving on, Christmas music, Christmas holiday music. I think that's kind of redundant. Christmas holiday public domain. I brought that up earlier. All you have to do is just Google public domain Christmas songs, and I would check any song that you're going to cover that one site says is public domain. Look it up on a second site just to absolutely verify, because I've actually listed some stuff in Taxi's listings and been called out by members that go, not so fast, bucko. That is actually not public domain. And you know what? They were right. I relied on just one list, and that list was wrong. Cinematic music. Cinematic could be a lot of things, but it implies largesse. It's big, it's cinematic. It could be a score that you would hear, looking out over the American Southwest, like a big John Wayne, I don't even remember who did Bum 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 Bum, the Marlboro Man theme. It's actually got like a real title. That would be cinematic. You could also have cinematic be something that's more modern and contemporary, that would apply to like an urban scene or something that's not the American Southwest. It doesn't have to be mountains and cacti and horses and desert to be cinematic. You know what? I remember there were a couple pieces of music in the movie The Martian. Um, they were very cinematic, and there you go. He was definitely they probably actually shot it in the American Southwest, but it was supposed to be the Martian landscape. Um, Circus music again. I would say calliope, tuba, big bass drum. Like the kind you carry and hit with two sticks. That would be circus music. Classic rock. We all know what that sounds like. Classical music. Now, here's an interesting thing about classical music. Many people think classical music is just that. Sorry for the poor picture quality on that, but it's a very old picture that dates back to the 1700s. But classical music could also be that. And you might say, well, that's new classical or neoclassical. Not necessarily. Those dudes could be playing classical music. Just exactly. Well, not exactly, please. Oh, yeah, there's a violin in that one. That's all classical. And just so you know, the classical period is from 1750 to 1820. Let's talk about your oldies but goodies, huh? Cocktail jazz, a frequently requested genre. There are so many scenes and so many TV shows and movies where two people are having a conversation in a restaurant, in a booth, in a lounge or a bar. You can always almost smell the leather of that scallop-shaped booth. And what do you hear in the background? Cocktail jazz. Just one person sitting at a piano playing something light, something smooth, something not complicated because you don't want it to step on dialogue. Cocktail jazz. If you do that, do a lot of it. People need it. It gets asked for a lot. Comedy. Very broad. But, marimbas, pizzicato, up-tempo, maybe some percussion thrown in there. Contemporary country. You hear it on radio every day if you listen to a country station. Contemporary jazz. Tune in a jazz station. You're going to hear it every day. Contemporary reggae. Frankly, I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, you could probably identify contemporary reggae from old school reggae. Country alternative. I think the country market in general has a lot of alt country going on nowadays. Country combined with hip hop, well known to be hick hop. Country blues, country pop, country rock, country swing, country and western. So all those different subgenres of country could all potentially be used in bar scenes. Yeah, I'm stuck. I don't know. Other bar scenes, yes. I'm sure there are plenty of other places. Cuban music. We all know what that sounds like. It's awesome. I love Cuban music. Very, very rhythmic, very melodic, great brass in it, and just tons of fun to listen to. And if I danced, I would dance to Cuban music. Cumbia. That, believe it or not, has been something that we've had requests for of late. Again, that goes back to like norteño and some of the other subgenres of Latin music. Dance music. That's really broad. But anything that you can dance to is bound to get asked for sooner or later, whether it's EDM, electronic dance music, could be disco. Let's see, is disco even on here? Yes, disco's coming right up. Dance hall, dance rock, death metal, deep house. Frankly, I wouldn't know the difference between house and deep house. Maybe I need a little education on that, but people ask for it. Disco. Disco house. No idea what that sounds like, but I'll bet you can dance to it. Discovery music, and I'm not sure if they mean music that you would typically hear on the Discovery Channel or if they mean music to discover stuff by. I'm not clear on that one. Dixieland, we all know what that sounds like. Give me a straw hat and a clarinet and a funny looking outfit, I'm ready to go. I don't think there's going to be a lot of demand for it, but you know what? If you're one of the people that does Dixieland anyway and you do it well, you could corner the market on that. Dominican music, another form of, I would imagine that Dominican music is somewhere between Latin and Caribbean, because that's where Dominican Republic is actually the other half of the island that Haiti is on. And I've been there twice, and frankly, I don't remember what kind of music was the indigenous music there. So maybe I should have paid more attention. I do remember a bar called the Treetop Bar in a village called Sosua, and they made a drink called a B-52. That's about all I remember from that trip. Nah, there's other stuff I won't tell you about. Down tempo. Is that a genre or is that a description? Um, I'm guessing that's not a genre, but that's a style, down tempo music. Um, yeah, I don't know what to say about that one. Drama. Again, that's not necessarily a genre, but it's a style. Music that would be good for a drama. Dream pop. We've had requests for that. I'm trying to think of a good example of dream pop. Shoot. Really, really, really bad with band names or artist names. Dream pop. I give up. I don't know. I'll think of it after the show's over. Maybe somebody will toss that one out there. Mojo says down tempo refers to slow EDM. So that would be people dancing like this, and the vocals would sound really slow. Drill. Does that mean like drums? Like a drill team music? Don't know. Drone. And drone's ambient. We all know, yeah, drill and drumline. I'm guessing those two are related. Drone and drone's ambient. Here we are. We're 45 minutes into this and we're only on the letter D. I've got to hurry up. Drum and bass. Drumline, again, spelled in one word instead of two. Dub, which is not the same as dubstep. Early jazz, Eastern European music. And again, that's one of those things where, are they talking traditional Eastern European music? Are they talking contemporary music? Is somebody, I think Slovenia would be considered, I could be wrong, got a bone up on my geography, but I think someplace like Slovenia, or maybe is Serbia in Eastern Europe? What would you hear in a nightclub there if you were watching a spy movie and you had to chase somebody, or the characters chase somebody into a club? What kind of Eastern European music would you hear there versus something Eastern European, that you might hear in a village somewhere back in the early 1900s, still in Eastern Europe, but more traditional, more Eastern European folk than Eastern European contemporary. Easy listening. Have you guys noticed that the phrase, maybe I'm just out of the loop and I never heard this before, but all of a sudden, like in the last month, I've heard the phrase or the genre yacht rock. Yacht, like let's go out on my yacht, which I don't own. I don't even own a model of a yacht, but yacht rock, and that would be like Christopher Cross, the song "Sailing," which I don't think is called yacht rock because of the title; it's the style. Some of the Doobie Brothers stuff, a band that I worked with back in the day, Firefall, I think might be considered yacht rock. So kind of that smooth, not too edgy rock from the mid to late 70s, I would think, probably with some vocal harmonies, would be considered yacht rock. Easy listening, it's kind of a mushy area, they all blend together. Electro house, electro pop, electro swing, electronic generically and across the board, electronic dance music, also known as EDM, electronica. And some people get really offended if you call electronic music electronica. Other people get offended if you call electronica electronic. So I'm so afraid to offend either one of those groups that I just usually don't mention them. I just go EDM like that and just kind of walk away from the conversation. Electronica, dance club, house trance. I think you'd have to be in a trance to say that and use that as a genre. Electronica, dance club, house trance. What? Electronica downbeat. This is where it gets confusing, and I can't define it for you. Certainly don't have the time in this show because I'm only on the letter E and I've got a ton more to go. Electronica downbeat. I would think that would, to me, that's like chill wave, right? Am I nuts? Let's see if anybody's answered. Yacht rock is 70s music from when you could buy a yacht from your royalties. Thanks, Mojo. Seals and Crofts. There you go. Uh, Neil McTavish said, yeah, you could buy it if you didn't spend your money on Coke. And I'm pretty sure he's not talking about the kind that you sip through a straw. Well, you snort it through a straw, maybe. Electronica Euro synth pop. Electronica jungle drum and bass. I mean, you've really got to be an aficionado of some of these genres to really know what they sound like. But sometimes people ask for this stuff. And if you are, this is what I'm talking about. This is a success strategy. If you already know the genre and you do it well, why not be the superstar in that genre? Elevator music. Again, that's more of a style than a genre, but it does get asked for pretty frequently. And it kind of implies cheesy, Muzak-ish elevator music. Like cheap-sounding bossa nova. Girl from Ipanema. I can't tell you. Nah, I probably can't tell you. I would say probably 4 or 5 times in the last 5 or 6 years that music supervisors I know have wanted to license Girl from Ipanema for a scene in a film, usually involving an elevator. It's frequently like a chase scene or something, and people duck into an elevator, the door closes, and while they're all beat up and shot up and bloody and sweaty and their t-shirts are torn, as soon as that elevator door closes, you hear Girl from Ipanema playing. But apparently that song is one that every time somebody wants to license it, the publisher says, okay, I want this number way up there. And then the music supervisors go out looking for other music that sounds not a rip-off of Girl from Ipanema, but something, that same kind of Muzak version of bossa nova that could replace Girl from Ipanema. And then ultimately it seems like the producers of the film or the TV show end up getting the actual song for a price that works for them. So there you go. Emo, that's a genre that I personally never understood. Entertainment news. Entertainment Tonight, Access Hollywood, Entertainment News. Entertainment News EDM, Entertainment News Funky, Entertainment News Red Carpet. Red carpet music has a sound. Go back and watch red carpet interviews and watch the bumpers where they leave the red carpet and go to commercial or come back from commercial to the talking head holding the microphone up with the Access Hollywood logo on the microphone. Listen to the music that you hear. That's an actual genre. But you know what? Most people don't make that. But if you're adept at making that, make a lot of it and become known as the go-to person for that. Entertainment news rock. Euro synth pop. Euro dance. European generically. That one's too broad. Boy, if we just put a listing out that said, give us European music, our members their heads would explode. Experimental. My theory on experimental is there's some really interesting experimental music, and then there's some that sounds more accidental than experimental, but I'm certainly no genius when it comes to that genre. Here's one I've never heard of before, gotta admit. Fado or Fado, F-A-D-O. Maybe that's one of those Latin subgenres that I'm completely unfamiliar with. Fanfare music. Da-da-da-da. We all know what that is. Why do I feel like a crown just showed up in my head? Here's a genre that, remember, I didn't make these lists up. Female music. Kid you not, that's on there. Female vocal drone. Why do I think of like a meditation class in Santa Monica when I hear that? I don't know. Film noir. Ooh, that's a style we can all hear. Film score, well, that's really wide ranging. That could be almost anything. Flamenco, not almost anything. It's one thing. So if you do it, yay. Folk punk. I don't even know what folk punk sounds like. Folk rock, free jazz, free Willy. Just kidding. French music, again, is very wide ranging. But you know what? We get a fair number of requests for French music. It could be French cafe music. It could be what you would hear in an underground club in France. It could be music that you would hear in a World War II movie with two people from the French underground meeting, to pass off some secret information. Frunk. No idea what that is. I'm guessing that's a combo, a hybrid of French funk. Frunk. Go frunk yourself. Funeral music. I actually made a note on this one. Funeral music. What would you hear at a funeral? Well, if you're the decedent, not much. Amazing Grace. Yeah, you could hear that at a funeral, but that's really a hymn. A funeral dirge. Yeah, certainly. So think about that. No shortage of funeral scenes, right? So why not become the person who's the go-to person for funeral music, or is that funereal music? Or some music just becomes funereal because it doesn't do much. Okay, funk. We all know what that sounds like. Funk rock. We all know what that sounds like. Funk and funky house. Wasn't Funky House? Oh no, that was Punky Brewster. Funky House. That's a great name for a character. Fusion. Fusion implies two things coming together, the combination thereof. So what about fusion? Jazz rock fusion, right? Jazz, almost anything fusion. It seems like jazz is frequently one of the fused elements. Future bass, no idea. Something Fender must be coming out with for 2018. Game show music. There's one that comes up and I think is going to come up forever. Game show music has a sound, and it hasn't really progressed that much since back in the days of the 50s and 60s. It's gotten a little better, maybe a little more contemporary sounding, and probably incorporates elements that you would hear in contemporary music, maybe an EDM beat today or a hip-hop beat or something that you would hear on pop radio. But game show music is usually pretty identifiable as game show music. Speaking of which, I don't know how many of you have Amazon Echo Dots out there, but I'm going to start a little thing right now. Alexa, play Jeopardy! I think right now 20 Amazon Dots just lit up blue and started playing the game of Jeopardy! Garage music and garage rock. Honestly, I've been educated in the last year or so. There are different kinds of garage rock. Garage rock can be, kind of crunchy, guitar-driven teenage music played with reckless abandon. That's kind of close to grunge, but I think that garage rock, in the requests that we've had probably 3 or 4 of in the last year, is different than that. It's like, what would you... I'm in my early 60s, so what did my band play in John Haynes's parents' garage back in 1968? I would have been in like 8th grade. That is garage rock, and that's the kind of garage rock they're usually looking for lately. German music, again, come on, guys. Really, German music? Are you talking, what would a bunch of Nazi officers listen to, hanging out, plotting to evilly take over the world, versus what would you hear in a beer garden, versus what you would hear in a German nightclub today? I don't know. I think that one's too broad. Glam rock, I think we all know what that sounds like. Gospel, we all know what that sounds like. Goth, we all stare at our shoes and wonder what that sounds like. Greek, again, we're talking geographical locations and names of countries, although, Greek, there isn't a place called Greek, but there is a place called Greece, and that has a sound, but is it a modern form of that, or a traditional form of Greek music? So you'd need some sort of descriptor with that. Grunge music, the sound of Seattle. Gypsy music, I think of Pinocchio stuck in the back of that little wagon with his little nose sticking out through the bars when I hear gypsy music. I don't know why, but doesn't gypsy music usually have like an accordion or a concertina and probably a clarinet? And if you think about it, I'm guessing that gypsy music is not all that different, maybe somewhat melodically different, but kind of similar to klezmer music, which is like Eastern European Jewish music, klezmer music, Fiddler on the Roof, klezmer music. There you go. So gypsy music, Fiddler on the Roof, it's kind of like Eastern European folk music of a certain variety. Haitian music, I don't know what that sounds like. Halloween music, ooh, spooky. Hardcore rap, we all know what that sounds like. Hard rock, we know what that sounds like. Hawaiian music, we know what that sounds like. Heavy metal, heroic. Now, heroic could be, big guitar-driven arena rock music. Could, in the right context, could be heroic. So could a giant score done, in a Hollywood soundstage for, the troops are coming over the ridge to save the day, or it could be Bruce Willis saves a bunch of people in an office building. Could be a lot of stuff. So heroic is one of those genres that's just plain broad. Isn't it funny, though, that more people describe music that's used, especially for film and TV, by genres rather than by the scene? If I were a music supervisor, I would think I would reach out to a bunch of people and say, I need music for a World War II flick where a bunch of troops are coming over the ridge to save the day, and see what I got in, rather than saying, send me heroic music. Just my personal preference, the way I would do it. Hip hop. Can't make enough hip hop music. If you make hip hop music, you're not going out of work or going to be out of work anytime soon. Hip hop club dance, hip hop R&B, hip hop old school rap. We get quite a few requests for that. Hispanic music, very, 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 very broad. Hit music. I'm not even going to answer that one or talk about that. Holiday music we already talked about. Hopeful music. That's a descriptor more than it is, it's an adjective, right? It's adjective or adverb? I think it's an adjective. That could be a song, could be an instrumental, could be an acoustic singer-songwriter thing, with the lyric about something that gives hope, or it could be a piano piece, solo piano piece that is hopeful sounding just by nature of its melody, and its tempo and rhythm, or it could be a score. So hopeful, that's an adjective. Let's see. I'm getting a call from the front desk. Hello. Now I'm in the middle of Taxi TV. Can maintenance come in and work on your ceiling tiles that fell down? Nope. Apparently nobody on the staff watches the big show. Hymns. Oh, that's Luke's travel agency calling. Don't know why that rang through. Hymns. Now, it could be a hymn for a Western, where you've got people in a small church. By the way, the church that is on Westworld is only about 3 miles away from my house, out in a little movie ranch. It's not far away from my house out in the hills. Not that I live in the hills, but my house looks at the hills that the movie ranch, Paramount Ranch, is at. And was out there a couple of weeks ago and went, oh, I've seen that church. It's on Westworld. Indian music, which is the parent genre of Bollywood music. And again, that could be anything from just a single instrument, I would imagine, up to an ensemble of a few instruments, up to a huge orchestra. Let's see, indie adult contemporary. I don't know what indie adult contemporary sounds like. Geez. Who's the young lady that had her first big breakthrough hit with an Apple commercial? She might fit under indie adult contemporary. I'm sure you guys can probably rattle off some artists better than I can. Okay, indie Americana. So that's basically Americana, but maybe a little sloppier, a little edgier, or a little more rough edges is probably a better way to say it. Indie blues rock, you know, indie lounge, no idea. Indie pop, we see that all the time, and frankly, indie pop and indie rock are hard for me to discern which is which. There are people on our A&R staff that could rattle off a list of bands much better than I can, but I have discerned that indie rock generally has guitars in it. Indie pop is often more keyboard driven. Melodically, they can be somewhat similar, and frankly, I find the two genres a little tough. But if I were a taxi member getting ready to submit for a listing for either one of those, you know what? Invest 5 minutes. Look at Wikipedia, click on links, listen to examples, go to Spotify. It doesn't take much to figure it out in the moment. Indie singer-songwriter. I think we all know what that sounds like. And frankly, I've talked about this before on the show. I want to address it again very quickly, which is singer-songwriter as the genre that most of us remember it being from the days of James Taylor, Cat Stevens, that kind of stuff. The singer-songwriter stuff that I grew up with. Singer-songwriter is a genre that progresses. It changes with the ages, and don't let yourself be stuck in the generational sound of your generation. There is singer-songwriter stuff today that sounds very close to pop music, but it is still considered indie singer-songwriter because it's probably done by the person, performed by the person that wrote it. But like Colby Calais, she's not super duper contemporary. I mean, she's been around now for a bunch of years, but her music, she's a singer-songwriter, but yet her stuff sounds hip and contemporary at the same time. So don't let yourself think that singer-songwriter means it's from the 70s. If it says classic singer-songwriter, that may be a different case. Indonesian, Malaysian. Pretty easy to imagine what that sounds like. I don't think that there are a lot of requests for it, so I don't know if that's a genre that, you know what? Travel shows or some of those edgy docuseries or documentaries that go there to talk about maybe the bad guys Abu Sayyaf that I believe are based in Indonesia. Might need some Indonesian instrumental stuff for that. Industrial and industrial rock, those get asked for. It's not frequent, but it's not infrequent. Industrial techno, that would be something you would probably hear in a club setting, I would guess. But it could also be used maybe in a commercial. Innovation technology music. I don't know that that's a genre so much as a style, but oh gosh, what's the show? How It's Made. They use a ton of that stuff. Instrumental was actually on one of the lists, and I just wrote, duh. International, and I wrote, huh? Question mark. International could be anything that's outside of the country you live in, technically would be international, would it not? Just saying. Investigative. And while we're on the subject of investigative, I don't know if this is going to be on the list later. I forgot to look for it, but procedural stuff. That would be like a certain type of music you would hear in CSI would be considered procedural. Investigative could be something that would be in a show like NCIS or CSI. Could also be used in a more reality style show that's on Discovery Channel or one of those networks. Maybe True TV. I don't know if I have my network right or not. Irish rock, Irish Celtic, all subgenres of Irish music. Like it took a genius to figure that out. island pop. You know, if I played you island music and I played you Caribbean music, would you know the difference? I'd have to think about that. I'd have to do a little research, but you probably make one or the other, at least some of you do. Why not become the person who dominates that category? That is a success strategy, right? Italian, Jamaican, Japanese, jazz, jazz fusion, jazz pop, jazz smooth, which would be smooth jazz to most of us, standard jazz, Jewish music, which could be anything from Hatikva to klezmer music to you would think I would know, wouldn't you? But I don't. I just can't think of stuff fast enough. Jug band. Jug band. I'll bet nobody watching the show has any jug band music done. But I'll bet you if you did 3 or 4 pieces of jug band music and sent them out to libraries, that they would want it, because sooner or later somebody's going to ask for jug band music, and most of them don't have any great jug band music. Juju. I have no idea what that is unless it's a racial slur, but I'm pretty sure it's not because it's spelled J-U-J-U. Jungle. Klezmer. Right back to the Jewish music. Korean music. Now, do they mean dance pop, like Korean dance pop, like Psy, or do they mean traditional Korean? I don't know. It's hard to know. Contemporary Latin, Latin hip-hop, rap, Latin house, Latin jazz, Latin pop, Latin R&B, neo-soul, Latin rock, Latin traditional, which, you know, there are all kinds of subgenres of traditional Latin. Vintage Latin. What is vintage Latin? Anything that is, in my opinion, only because I have dealt with a lot of vintage music in the years that I've run Taxi, vintage doesn't mean that it necessarily just sounds like it's from an era. Usually when people say, I've got a piece of vintage music, it means it's actually from that era. It was written back then and recorded and produced back then. Yeah, anything could be vintage. Could be vintage garage rock. You know, if I had recordings of what my band, the Benjamin Franklin Lightning Rod Society, recorded on a, what we would have, I don't even know what the hell we would have recorded on back then in 1968. Probably nothing. Maybe wax cylinders. But anything that was recorded back in the day. And you would all be a little surprised to know that the people who deal in vintage music aren't necessarily, actually, they don't want stellar recordings. They don't want something that was recorded with you know, $1,000 compressor on Pro Tools that sounds spectacularly good, because it doesn't sound authentic to the era. They would much rather have a demo that was recorded in 1977 than something that was recorded today and made to sound like it's from 1977. So just know that, in my personal opinion, anytime you see the word vintage attached to a request for music, it means it should have been recorded back in the day. Now, what we do at Taxi is when we have a listing where somebody wants something that sounds like it was recorded in 77, but they're willing to take stuff that was recorded last week and sounds like it was 1977, we say vintage hyphen sounding. We frequently will even italicize the word sounding to make it jump out so you guys notice and go, oh, vintage sounding, not actual vintage music. Lighthearted comedy. Again, with the marimbas, pizzicato strings, tuba, maybe clarinet, some wacky percussion. Lounge music, we already talked about that. Well, you know, there's lounge music, which is actually a genre, and lounge music that would be music you would hear in a lounge. So they are two different things. And I think this is referring to lounge, the genre, because we have lounge, modern, ultra lounge on the list. I wouldn't know the difference, but I would research it. Here's one we all do know. Rat Pack Lounge. Sammy Davis Jr., Frank Sinatra. Who else was in the Rat Pack? Oh, geez. Dean Martin was in the Rat Pack. The guy that was married to one of the Kennedys was in the Rat Pack. So you know what that sounds like. It's swinger music, Las Vegas style, baby. You know, you got the cute little fedora going on. Did I just say cute fedora? God, what the hell's the matter with me? Um, Lullaby. If you don't know what that is, I don't know what to tell you. Male vocal. That's, yeah, let's just, you know what? I'm going back to take that one off the list. There you go. Off the list. Mambo. Mandarin. A form of Chinese music, no doubt. March music. John Philip Sousa. If you know who I'm talking about, then you understand what march is. March music, marches, marching band music, you get it. John Philip Sousa is certainly the best known American composer of marches. Mariachi music. Oh, and now one of my very, very favorites, which is medieval music. And I'm going to let this photograph also be for Renaissance music. Now here's the interesting thing about this. Some things never change. Look up there. That is a groupie getting ready to head out. Is she in the shot? Yeah. There we go. A groupie getting ready to head out with one of the guys in the band right there. That's a your place or mine situation. This dude right there with the satin jacket on, he's clearly the producer and telling everybody else what to do. And back there, right there, that guy with the drink in his hand, holding up his finger, getting ready to pick his teeth or his nose, that's probably the band's manager. So I just want to say that some things never change, right? They never change. By the way, medieval music, if you pronounce it exactly right, 1400s up to 1450, just in case you were wondering. And I don't know this for a fact, but I'm going to guess, isn't that called a lute, right? So there you go. That's this week's visual aid right there. That cost us a lot of money to produce that for the show. Memphis Blues, merengue. I love lemon merengue pie, my favorite. Metalcore. I've heard the name, don't know what it means. Mexican. That's a region, a state, a country that's very broad. But then again, you have Mexican polka right underneath it, and I think we all, Mexican polka is remarkably similar to German polka. It's got an accordion. That much I know. It's got an accordion, and it's got that oompa thing going on. It sounds pretty much like regular polka, but somehow has kind of a Latin effect. Middle Eastern, I talked about that earlier before, I think under the subheading or subgenre of Arabic. But anything Middle Eastern. There are a lot of shows that deal with terrorism now, and they need that music. Military music. And are we talking, we had a request that we haven't put out yet, because I just wasn't sure I wanted to run the listing, but it was for just military drums, period. That kind of stuff. Modal jazz, modern classical. Let's go back to visual aids. Those guys could be playing modern classical, could they not? Or they could be playing classical. Just saying. Motivational music. That would be easily found on a lot of infomercials. Motown. We all know that and love it. Muzak. That goes back to... Muzak implies corny, cheesy, what you would hear in a department store. Native American usually implies some sort of rhythmic drums and primitive flutes. Neo blues, which implies neo blues, neo folk, neo soul, neo techno. Neo means new, means a contemporary take on something. So blues, folk, soul, techno, classical, soul, that's in there again. That's funny. Those are all neos. New age. You know what? New age. A lot of people make new age music, and not a lot of supervisors ask for it. But there are other genres that I think that have supplanted new age, kind of pushed it out of the way. Um, Probably genres like chill wave, stuff that's really laid back and has the same basic effect, which is it's calming and atmospheric and ambient and relaxing, and have a sip of red wine and sit on that. What do they call those chairs where you don't feel any pressure points? You know what I'm talking about, right? None of us can afford it, but we've all seen the TV commercials. Um, West LA Steve says New Age is tough to nail. Yeah, one person's New Age is another person's chill wave, I gotta say. News music, Nigerian music, Norteño, that's a form of Latin music. North African, I don't know that I would know the difference between North African and South African. Northern European, novelty music. Again, broad category, but who the hell's going to put out a listing that says, I need novelty music? I don't know that I would invest a lot of time in novelty music because I think it would be a novelty that you would ever get a chance to license it. Although, every now and then, you might. New disco, spelled N-U. New metal, spelled N-U. And then there's a thing called mu metal, which is used to keep radio waves out of electronic devices, if I remember correctly from an electronics class that I took. Old European music, again, very, very broad. Old school. Old school what? Oldies. Oldies implies music from the 50s. Sock hop music, I would think, most of the time. Although my children think anything that I worked on is an oldie. Opera. We've had a couple of listings for opera lately. You know what? That's one that makes my case for a success strategy. There are times where people need operatic music for TV shows. A spy movie, a couple of people go to the opera. Could be a TV drama, they go to the opera. They don't want to license an expensive recording of some famous opera star doing it, but guess what? If you are able to sing opera and you can do a cover of a public domain opera song, you could corner the market on opera. I like it. Orchestral hip hop. Patriotic, again, broad general category, but we all know it when we hear it. We feel patriotic. It's very visceral. Public domain, I talked about that before. That's anything, I forget, what is it, 75 years? Somebody fill me in on that. Martin J. Frog says, I think my head's getting full, starting to feel like it's going to explode. That's how we feel here at Taxi. We got to, if we don't know it, we got to look it up, research it, find examples of it, and then explain it to you guys so that you submit. There I am. I'm back. I hope you guys can see me. Uh, okay. That's the first time I've ever seen the screen go black on my side that I can remember. I'm actually getting close. I'm going to start going really fast because I want to try and nail this whole thing in an hour and a half. Peruvian music, piano music, places and locations, cities, countries. What would you hear, in a restaurant, in a fine dining restaurant versus a taco bar? So think about where you are. That's location music. A department store, what would you hear there? Muzak, most likely. Or maybe some sort of smooth jazz in the background. Polish music, political presidential election music. I'm not even going to touch that one. Polka, we know what that sounds like. Pop is anything that's popular and on the charts. Pop bubblegum, pop rock, post-punk, post-rock, power ballad, power pop, progressive house, psych rock. There's one I've seen that I don't know anything about. Punjabi, a form of Indian music, punk rock, quirky, so broad who the hell would know? If that's not used as an adjective to modify or describe another genre, throw it out. R&B, ragtime, reggaeton, ranchera, rap, rave, reality TV. Talk about broad. Wow. Reggae, ambient dub, religious, Renaissance music. Believe it or not, those dudes could be Renaissance musicians. Almost the same era, slightly later than, what was the other era? Oh, medieval and Renaissance. Very close. They were adjacent musical periods. Period. Retro could be a descriptor for anything. Rumba, rock and roll, rock adult contemporary, rock alternative pop, rock ambient, classic rock, hard rock, heavy metal. That's all been talked about before. Rockabilly, that's a pretty popular genre. Musicians like to make rockabilly, and it gets requested every now and then. Romantic period, also known as classical sometimes. There can be crossover there, but Beethoven, Schubert, Mendelssohn, Chopin. Let me whip out the visual aid again. Romantic period. Gee, in all these years I thought romantic was like a guy and a girl falling in love on Valentine's Day. Romantic comedy. Roots, rumba, Russian folk, Russian rap, salsa, samba, score, really broad, Scottish, pretty identifiable, screamo, silent film. I think silent film is just piano, and it's a style of piano that we've all heard on like early Charlie Chaplin movies. Singer-songwriter, we know it well. Ska, smooth jazz, soft rock, Christopher Cross, there he is again. Solo guitar. You know, solo guitar can be acoustic, can be electric, can be ambient, can be jazz. Maybe the most lucrative solo guitar thing I think I've ever heard is there's an insurance commercial. I think it's an insurance commercial that sounds something like, you know, an old hollow body jazz guitar. Somebody's playing, you know, like that. I don't know what you call that style. But every time I hear it, I go, that person who played that guitar has made a crap ton of money on it. Somber music, very broad. Soul music, very broad. Sound design, very broad. South African, I wouldn't know the difference between that and North African, but I'm sure somebody does. South American, broad. Southern rock, God bless them. Southern rock gets requested fairly frequently. Spaghetti Western, complicated to make, fun to make from all parties that I know that have made it. They talk about what a great time they have making spaghetti Western music. Gosh, who's the composer? It's famous for it. He pretty much defined the genre. Can't think of his name. Can't think of his name. Anyway, he's the godfather of spaghetti Western music. Spanish music, specialty music, too broad. Crossing that one off the list. Speed metal. Spiritual, sports, standards. Standards. What are standards? Standards, I want to say, feel like 1930s, 40s, 50s, that kind of stuff. Morricone. Thank you, Mojo. He's the spaghetti Western composer that everybody would like to be. All right. Stinger music, surf spice, suspense, swing, Swiss, synth pop, tango, techno, Tejano, tension drama suspense, Tex-Mex, Texas blues, Thai, Thanksgiving, theatrical, themes, thriller, Tibetan, tonal impact, traditional country and western, traditional country, traditional jazz, traditional pop, traffic report, not related to the band Weather Report, trailer music, which is changing quite a bit these days, trailer action adventure, which is kind of the trailer music that many of us think of, trailer choral, which is 100 voices, trailer comedy, which is a whole different kind of trailer music. Trailer fantasy, another kind of trailer music. Trailer horror music. Man, I've still got pages to go. All right, I'm going to read them off really quickly, and at some point soon I will publish this thing. Trailer hybrid, trailer off the beaten path, trailer orchestral, trailer romantic comedy, trailer spooky, trailer suspense, trailer world music, trance, transition, transition bumpers, transition risers, transition stingers, transition swells, transition urban scratch. Whoops. There you go. There's some transition scratch for you right there. Trap, travel music, trip-hop, tropical, Turkish, TV theme, tween, Ukrainian, ultra lounge, underscore, urban, vaudeville, ooh, vaudeville, video game, Vietnamese, vintage, vintage masters, vintage mixes, wacky game show, waltz, wedding, West Coast swing, Western, this is all world music. Pakistani, African, Arabic, Asian, Basque, Brazilian, French, German, Hawaiian, Indian, Italian, Japanese, Mexican, Middle East, Polish, Scottish, Celtic, Irish, Russian, South American, Spanish, Swiss, world beat, yacht rock, Yiddish, and Zydeco. Whew, finally got to Zydeco. Anyway, all this to say, there is a strategy out there. You've probably never used it, and there are just some genres that get used more often than other genres, and they are probably genres that you are adept in. So why would you want to invest your time necessarily in stuff that's really difficult for you to do, that takes a long time for you to do, and that may not have much of a marketplace, when you may already be quite adept at doing something that was on this very lengthy 16-page list of genres, most of which were fruitful. There were a few in there that like, take them off the list. But why wouldn't you invest your time in doing what you already do well? It just makes so much sense to me. So rather than thinking about all these strategies about I'm going to use social media to make myself famous, why not just take something that you are already good at, that there is an existing market for, make those two things come together and make really, really, really good music, and make yourself the go-to person for that type of music, whether it's you want to be the king or queen of a niche or a niche, depending on how you like to pronounce it, or you want to go for a category that's broad and gets used very frequently, where you may not be the king or queen of the niche, but there's just so much demand for it and you do it really well that you get a lot of placements with it. So there you go. That's my big tip for the week. I am going to try next week to do a remote in a famous taxi member's home studio. We talked loosely about it a couple of weeks ago. I've got to circle back with that person and see if next Monday is good. Until then, I hope you guys have a good week. I hope that those of you who are stuck in 4 feet of snow or getting drenched in rain in Southern California dig out. Have a great week. I will see you guys soon. Thank you so much for watching this fun, really educational episode of Taxi TV Live. See you next week, ladies and gentlemen. Bye-bye.